The transport shuttle descended toward Station Viridian with practiced ease, its hull reflecting the light of 3 distant suns. Inside, Day One pressed his face against the window, watching the massive structure grow larger. The station was a marvel of engineering, a floating city that housed over 2 million beings from across the galaxy. Museums, research facilities, and diplomatic quarters all existed within its spinning rings. "Stop acting like a tourist," Hee-Jin said from the seat beside him. She was reviewing data on her tablet, preparing for their meeting with the museum curator. "We've been to bigger stations." "Not ones with access to the ancient collection," Daewon replied. His eyes sparkled with excitement. For 5 years, he had been studying fragments of human history scattered across colony worlds. Now he finally had clearance to examine artifacts from Earth's lost generation ships. The shuttle docked smoothly. They gathered their equipment and made their way through the crowded corridors. Station Viridian was a melting pot of species. Day One saw insectoid Thranx merchants haggling with crystalline luxons. A group of aquatic aquarii floated past in their water-filled mobility spheres. Towering above everyone were the Kryn, their reptilian features making other species instinctively give them space. The Galactic Museum occupied the station's central ring. Its entrance was marked by holographic displays, showing artifacts from civilizations both living and extinct. A tall, feathered being waited at the main desk. His plumage was silver and black, and his amber eyes tracked their approach with unnerving precision. "You must be the human researchers," the avian said. His voice was melodious, almost musical. "I am Velthar, senior curator. Welcome to our facility." Day One extended his hand, then remembered that Velthar's species found the gesture uncomfortable. He bowed instead. "Thank you for granting us access. I'm Day One, and this is Hee-Jin." Velthar's head tilted in acknowledgement. "Your credentials are impressive for one so young. Few humans have published work on the colony ship era." He gestured with one wing arm. "Follow me." The human artifacts are in storage level 3. They walked through galleries filled with wonders. Day One saw the first faster-than-light drive encased in protective glass. He passed weapons from the Kryn-Thranx War that had nearly torn the galaxy apart. Each artifact had a story, a piece of history preserved for future generations. But Velthar led them past all of this, into restricted areas where security became noticeably tighter. Armed guards stood at checkpoints. Biometric scanners verified their identities multiple times. The deeper they went, the more Day One's curiosity grew. "Are all human artifacts kept under such heavy security?" Hee-Jin asked. "No," Velthar said. "We are taking a longer route. There is something I wish to show you first. Consider it a courtesy as you have traveled far." They entered a circular chamber. At its center, suspended in a shimmering containment field, floated a suit of armor. It was black as void, its surface seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. The design was elegant yet alien, with smooth curves that suggested both beauty and menace. Day One stopped breathing. He had never seen anything like it. "What is that?" Hee-Jin whispered. "We call it the Reaper's Mantle," Velthar said. His voice carried a weight of old sorrow. "It was found drifting in deep space 400 years ago. No ship nearby, no indication of where it came from. Initial scans suggested it was created by the Ancients." The Ancients. Every spacefaring species knew the legends. Millions of years ago, a civilization had spread across the entire galaxy. They built wonders that defied understanding, created technology that seemed like magic. Then suddenly they vanished. All that remained were ruins and artifacts scattered on forgotten worlds. "Why is it called the Reaper's Mantle?" Day One asked, unable to look away from the armor. Velthar's feathers ruffled in what might have been distress. "Because it has killed or broken the minds of over 10,000 beings. Every species in the Galactic Council has sent champions to attempt wearing it. Warriors, scientists, diplomats, psychics. All failed. The armor rejects them violently. Neural feedback, catastrophic pain, coma. 53 beings died. Thousands more never recovered their minds." Hee-Jin pulled at Day One's sleeve. "We should go. This doesn't concern our research." But Day One couldn't move. The armor held his attention like gravity held planets. There was something about it, something that called to him in a way he couldn't explain. His feet carried him closer to the containment field. "Do not approach too near," Velthar warned. "The field is calibrated to prevent contact, but the armor has exhibited strange properties in the past." A massive figure entered the chamber. Cross, the security chief, was a Kryn who stood nearly 8 feet tall. His scales were the color of old bronze, and his eyes held the cold calculation of a career soldier. "Curator, I must object to bringing outsiders here," Cross said. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. "This area is restricted for good reason." "They are cleared researchers," Velthar replied calmly. "I deemed it educational." Cross's gaze fixed on Daewon, who had moved within a meter of the containment field. "Step back, human." Daewon barely heard him. Up close, he could see details in the armor's surface. Patterns that might have been writing in an unknown language. Seams that suggested the pieces could move independently. And something else. Something that made his skin tingle. The armor's surface rippled. It was subtle, like a stone dropped in still water. Waves of faint light spread across the black material, pulsing in rhythm with something Daewon couldn't identify. He realized with shock that it matched his heartbeat. "Impossible," Velthar breathed. Cross moved fast for his size, pulling Daewon away from the field. "What did you do?" "Nothing. I just looked at it." The armor continued to pulse with light, brighter now. Alarms began to sound throughout the chamber. The containment field flickered and stabilized, then flickered again. More guards rushed in, weapons raised. "Shut down the field," Cross barked. "If we do, the armor could activate fully," one technician shouted back. "It's never done this before." Velthar's feathers had gone completely flat against his body, a sign of extreme agitation. "You must leave. Both of you now." Hyejin grabbed Daewon's arm and pulled him toward the exit. He stumbled backward, unable to tear his eyes from the armor. The light was fading now, returning to its dormant state, but he could still feel it, a phantom sensation like static electricity dancing across his skin. They were escorted out of the restricted area by armed guards. Velthar accompanied them, his usual composure shaken. "What happened in there?" Hyejin demanded. "I do not know," Velthar admitted. "The armor has remained inert for centuries. Even our most advanced technology cannot make it respond. Yet when you approached..." He looked at Daewon with something between fear and fascination. "There are theories, ancient prophecies, but they are only stories." Daewon found his voice. "What kind of stories?" "That the armor was created for a specific purpose, that it waits for one who can wear it, one who carries the bloodline of the ancients themselves." Velthar's amber eyes bore into him. "But such a thing is impossible. The ancients vanished long before any current species evolved. They reached the museum's public areas." Velthar stopped at the boundary between restricted and open zones. "I will report this incident to the council," he said. "They will want to question you. Until then, I suggest you remain on the station. Do not attempt to return to that chamber." After Velthar left, Hyejin turned to Daewon. "What really happened back there?" He shook his head. "I don't know. But I felt something. Like the armor recognized me." He laughed without humor. "That sounds crazy." "Everything about this is crazy," Hyejin said. "We should contact the embassy. If the council wants to interrogate you, we need legal protection." They made their way to their assigned quarters, a modest suite in the station's civilian housing ring. Daewon tried to focus on unpacking, on reviewing their research plans, on anything other than the armor. But his mind kept returning to those moments in the chamber, the way the light had pulsed, the feeling of connection. That night's sleep came with difficulty. When it finally did, Daewon dreamed. He stood on a battlefield beneath an alien sky. 3 moons hung overhead, casting purple shadows. Around him, beings in armor like the Reaper's mantle fought with weapons that tore reality itself. He heard voices speaking in languages he shouldn't understand but somehow did. He felt emotions that weren't his own. Duty, sacrifice, desperate hope. He watched civilizations rise and fall in heartbeats. He saw the galaxy young and wild, before any of the current species existed. He witnessed the creation of wonders and the birth of horrors. And through it all he wore the black armor, felt it move with him like a second skin, knew its power as intimately as his own breath. Daewon woke with a gasp, his sheets soaked with sweat. Dawnlight filtered through the viewport. Hyejin's voice came from the other room, speaking urgently into a communicator. Everything had changed. The armor had recognized him, and somehow, impossibly, he had recognized it in return. Whatever happened next, Daewon knew his life would never be the same. The Reaper's mantle had been waiting, and now it had found what it sought. The summons came at dawn. 2 council security officers stood at their door, their expressions neutral but their body language tense. Day One had expected this. What he hadn't expected was the crowd of journalists and curious onlookers that had gathered in the corridor outside. Word had spread impossibly fast. By the time Day One and Heejin reached the council chambers, half the station seemed to know that the Reaper's mantle had responded to a human. News feeds displayed his face alongside wild speculation. Some called him a prophet. Others demanded he be quarantined as a potential threat. The council chambers were built to impress and intimidate. The ceiling stretched hundreds of feet overhead, decorated with holographic displays of every member species' homeworld. Counselors sat in a semicircle, elevated above the floor where supplicants stood. There were 47 species represented, each with their own agenda. Velthar was present, standing in a witness box to one side. Cross loomed nearby, his massive arms crossed, but there was also a new face that made Daewon's stomach tighten. The figure was composed entirely of crystalline structures that refracted light into rainbow patterns. This was Morvan, the Council's overseer of dangerous artifacts. Daewon of humanity. Morvan's voice resonated like struck crystal. You stand before us to explain yesterday's incident. The Reaper's mantle has remained dormant for 4 centuries. What did you do to activate it? Nothing, Daewon said. I approached it, looked at it. That's all? Unacceptable, one of the Kryn counselors growled. The armor is a weapon of the ancients. If humans have discovered a way to activate it, this presents a security threat to the entire galaxy. A Thranx counselor clicked her mandibles in agreement. We demand full neural scans. If this human carries some trigger mechanism, we must understand it. Heejin stepped forward. My client has rights. You cannot perform invasive procedures without consent. Your client activated a weapon that has killed 53 beings. Morvan said coldly. The safety of billions outweighs individual privacy. The debate raged for an hour. Daewon stood silent, feeling like an object being discussed rather than a person. Finally, a compromise was reached. He would undergo non-invasive scans conducted by a neutral specialist. If those revealed anything unusual, further testing would require his consent. The specialist turned out to be a Thranx named Thex, whose compound eyes could see far beyond human visual range. His laboratory was filled with equipment that hummed and pulsed with energy. Daewon lay on an examination table while sensors mapped every aspect of his brain. Fascinating, Thex muttered, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into human language. Your neural patterns contain harmonic frequencies I have never seen in a human before. Actually, I have never seen them in any current species. What does that mean? Heejin asked. She had refused to leave Daewon's side. These frequencies match the resonance signature of ancient technology, Thex explained. But that should be impossible. The ancients died out millions of years ago. No modern species carries their genetic markers. Could it be a mutation? Daewon asked. Perhaps. Or perhaps. Thex's antennae twitched with excitement. Perhaps human evolution was not as independent as your species believes. If the ancients seeded genetic material before their disappearance, and if that material remained dormant in certain lineages, you're saying humans might be related to the ancients? Heijin's voice was sharp with disbelief. I am saying it is a possibility that requires further study, Thex said carefully, but it would explain why the armor responded to you. Before they could discuss further, alarms shrieked throughout the station. The laboratory's view screen flashed with emergency broadcasts. Unauthorized ships had breached the station's perimeter. Weapons fire had been detected in the museum sector. Cross's voice boomed over the intercom. All civilians to emergency shelters. This is not a drill. We are under attack. Daewon and Heijin ran for the door, but Thex stopped them. Wait, if they are attacking the museum, they are after the armor. You must stay away from there. All the more reason to go, Daewon said. If I'm the only one who can interact with it safely, I might be able to help. They raced through corridors filled with panicked civilians. Station security forces rushed past them toward the museum. The sound of energy weapons echoed through the metal walls. Daewon's heart hammered in his chest, but his feet kept moving forward. The museum's main hall had become a war zone. A group of heavily armed mercenaries in unmarked armor were fighting station security. Bodies lay scattered across the floor, both attackers and defenders. The mercenaries were pushing toward the restricted areas, toward the chamber that held the Reaper's mantle. Cross stood at a barricade, directing security forces. His scales were scorched from weapon fire, but he remained steady. When he saw Day-Wan, his eyes widened with fury. "Get that human out of here," he roared. An explosion rocked the museum. Part of the ceiling collapsed, crushing the barricade. Cross went down, buried under debris. The mercenaries surged forward, their path to the restricted area now clear. Day-Wan didn't think. He ran toward the chamber where the armor waited. He-Jin screamed his name, but he couldn't stop. Something was pulling him forward, an instinct deeper than conscious thought. He burst into the circular chamber. The containment field was flickering, damaged by the fighting. The armor floated at the center, pulsing with light. It was responding not just to his presence, but to the danger, as if it could sense the threat. 3 mercenaries entered behind him. They raised their weapons, but before they could fire, the containment field failed completely. The armor dropped, falling toward the floor. Day-Wan reached out instinctively to catch it. His hand touched the black surface and the universe exploded. The armor didn't feel solid. It felt liquid, alive, eager. It flowed over his hand, up his arm, spreading across his body in seconds. He tried to scream, but the armor covered his mouth, his face, everything. He felt it merge with his skin, felt it connect to his nervous system. Then came the memories. He saw the galaxy when it was young, filled with a civilization that had conquered physics itself. The ancients had not been one species, but a collective of many, united in pursuit of knowledge and beauty. They had created wonders, planets reshaped to perfect harmony, stars guided to new positions, life itself designed and nurtured across thousands of worlds. But power corrupted. Factions emerged. Some ancients believed they should guide younger species. Others wanted to let them develop naturally. The disagreement became conflict. Conflict became war. The ancients tore themselves apart with weapons that could unmake reality. In the final days, as their civilization burned, a group of ancients made a choice. They could not stop the destruction, but they could ensure that something of their legacy survived. They took their genetic material and seeded it across the galaxy, hidden within the DNA of primitive species. One day, when those species evolved and matured, they might find what had been left behind. The armor was part of that legacy. A tool created for the guardians who would come after. It was keyed to ancient genetics, waiting for someone who carried the bloodline to claim it. And humans, descended from primates on Earth, carried within them a gift from beings long dead, a gift they had never known existed. Day-One's consciousness returned to the present. He stood in the chamber encased in the black armor. It fit perfectly, moving when he moved, breathing when he breathed. Through its sensors, he could perceive the world in ways human eyes never could. He saw energy patterns, quantum fluctuations, the very fabric of space-time. The 3 mercenaries stared at him in horror. One raised his weapon, fired. The energy bolt splashed harmlessly against the armor's surface. "Stand down," Day-One said. His voice came out distorted, amplified by the armor. "Leave now and you won't be harmed." They ran. Day-One staggered, overwhelmed by the flood of information. The armor was showing him schematics, weapon systems, tactical data. It wanted to be used to fulfill its purpose, but the strain was enormous. His human body wasn't designed to handle this much input. Hyojin ran into the chamber. She stopped when she saw him, her face pale. "Day-Wan, it's me," he said. "I'm still me, I think. Can you take it off?" he tried. The armor didn't respond to his command. It had bonded with him completely, integrated into his biology. He was wearing it, but it was also part of him now. Velthar appeared in the doorway, his feathers raised in alarm. Behind him came council security and medical teams. They surrounded Day-Wan, weapons drawn but not aimed. "Do not move." Morven's voice echoed from a hovering drone. "You are now classified as a potentially hostile entity. Submit to containment or be neutralized." Pain lanced through Day-Wan's skull. The armor was teaching him, forcing information into his brain faster than he could process. He saw weapon systems activating, targeting solutions appearing. The armor wanted to protect him, to eliminate threats. "No," he gasped. "Stand down." "They're not enemies." The armor hesitated, then obeyed. The targeting systems deactivated. Day-Wan fell to his knees, the strain too much. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was Hyojin's face, twisted with concern, and beyond her a station full of beings who now feared what he had become. The armor had chosen him. But the price of that choice was only beginning to reveal itself. As consciousness faded, Day-1 woke to sterile white walls and the steady beep of medical monitors. His body felt strange, both his and not his at the same time. He tried to sit up and found the armor still covered him, though it had thinned to a second skin barely thicker than fabric. "Easy," a familiar voice said. His sister G1 sat beside the bed, her pilot's uniform rumpled from travel. Her eyes were red-rimmed but fierce. "You've been unconscious for 2 days. G1? What are you doing here?" Heejin called me. Said my idiot brother had bonded with a doomsday weapon. She squeezed his hand, careful of the black material. "You always were too curious for your own good." The door opened. An older human man entered, his gray hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. He carried himself with the confidence of someone who had spent decades proving himself in alien spaces. This was Tai Yang, and Day-1 knew his reputation. The man had dedicated 40 years to studying the ancients. "You're awake." "Good." Taeyang pulled up a chair, studying Day-1 with intense interest. "Do you know what you are now?" "A person wearing alien armor," Day-1 said. "No, you are proof of a theory I've held for decades. Humans are not native to this galaxy's current evolutionary cycle. We are descendants of the ancients, their genetic legacy preserved in our DNA." Taeyang leaned forward. "I've published papers arguing this point. The scientific community called me crazy, but you just proved I was right." Day-1 processed this. "If we're related to the ancients, why don't we have their technology?" "Their knowledge?" "Because they made sure we wouldn't," Taeyang said. "They seeded primitive genetic material, not fully developed species. They wanted their descendants to evolve naturally, to learn and grow without the weight of their mistakes. But they left keys hidden in our DNA, keys to unlock the tools they left behind. The armor. One of many, I suspect. The ancients scattered their legacy across the galaxy. Most of it remains buried or unrecognized. But now that one human has activated an ancient artifact, others might follow." A sharp pain shot through Day-1's head. The armor pulsed, responding to his distress. Information flooded his mind again, overwhelming his senses. He saw weapon schematics, tactical protocols, the accumulated knowledge of ancient warriors. Ji-Wan grabbed his shoulder. "What's happening?" "The armor," Day-Wan gasped. "It's trying to teach me. Too much, too fast." Taeyang pulled out a scanner. "Your body is human, but the armor is ancient technology operating at levels far beyond human capacity. The strain on your nervous system is immense. If this continues, it will kill you. Can we remove it? I don't think so. It's integrated with your biology at the cellular level. Removing it would be like removing your own skin." Taeyang's expression was grave. "You're going to have to learn to control it, or it will burn you out from the inside." Over the next few hours, they ran tests. The armor had enhanced Day-1's strength to incredible levels. He could lift objects that would normally require machinery. His reflexes operated faster than human thought. Through the armor's sensors, he could see across multiple spectrums, perceive things invisible to normal eyes. But every use brought pain. The armor drew power from his body's energy, from his very life force. Extended use would drain him completely. "You're a weapon now," Ji-Wan said bluntly. "The question is, whose weapon?" As if in answer, alarms blared through the medical facility. Hyjin burst in, her face pale with fear. "They're coming." Kreeth's fleet just entered the system. General Kreeth was known throughout the galaxy as a warlord who had conquered 12 systems through brutal force. If he wanted the armor, no amount of council diplomacy would stop him. Morvan's voice echoed from every speaker in the facility. "Attention, all personnel. The council has voted to surrender the human-designated Day-1 to General Kreeth. This decision is final." "They're selling you out," Ji-Wan said, her voice sharp with anger. "They'd rather give you to a monster than risk a war." "Can't blame them," Day-1 said quietly. "I am dangerous. Maybe it's better if I'm someone else's problem." Taeyang shook his head. "If Kreeth gets his hands on you, he'll dissect you to understand the armor. Then he'll hunt down every human in the galaxy, hoping to find others who can use ancient technology. He won't stop until he controls everything." "Then what do I do?" "Run," Heejin said. "I've contacted some friends. They have a ship. They moved fast." Ji-Wan and Heejin helped Day-1 through maintenance corridors while Taeyang ran interference, using his academic credentials to buy them time. The station was on lockdown, but Heejin had spent the last 2 days mapping escape routes. They reached a docking bay where a battered cargo hauler waited. Its captain was a grizzled human who asked no questions and accepted payment in advance. Within minutes, they were launching, slipping out of the station amid the chaos of Kreeth's fleet arrival. But they weren't fast enough. 3 of Kreeth's warships broke formation pursuing them. Energy blasts rocked the cargo hauler. The captain cursed, pushing the ship's engines to their limit. "We can't outrun them," G1 said, studying the tactical display. "Not with this bucket." In the distance, a civilian transport was fleeing the battle. It was packed with refugees, families trying to escape before the fighting started. One of Kreeth's warships changed course, moving to intercept it. "They're going to destroy that transport," Heejin said, horror in her voice. "They'll kill everyone on board just to prove a point." Daewon stood. The armor responded to his will, thickening into full combat configuration. "Get me close to that warship." "You can't survive in space," the captain protested. "The armor can." Daewon didn't know how he knew this, but the knowledge was there, placed in his mind by the ancients. "Open the cargo bay." Ji-won grabbed his arm. "This is suicide. It's necessary." He met her eyes. "Those people need help. Isn't that what humans are supposed to do? Help each other?" The cargo bay doors opened. Air rushed out into vacuum. Daewon jumped. The armor sealed completely, providing oxygen and pressure. He flew through space, propelled by systems he barely understood. The warship loomed ahead, massive and menacing. Its weapons were charging, preparing to fire on the defenseless transport. Daewon didn't hesitate. He slammed into the warship's hull, and the armor activated weapons he hadn't known existed. Energy blades extended from his arms. He carved through metal like it was paper, cutting deep into the ship's systems. Explosions bloomed along the warship's surface. Its weapon systems went offline. The ship began to list, crippled. The transport escaped, disappearing into faster-than-light travel. The other 2 warships turned their attention to Daewon. Hundreds of weapons locked onto his position. He was one man in a suit of ancient armor, facing enough firepower to level a city. The armor showed him tactical solutions. Weak points in the warship's shields. Optimal strike patterns. Probability calculations for survival. The probability was less than 1%. Daewon smiled grimly. "Let's see what we can do." He attacked. It was the most intense 17 minutes of his life. The armor moved faster than thought, dodging weapon fire, striking at vulnerable points. He destroyed weapons arrays, crippled engines, tore through shielding. Every action brought new pain, the strain of using the armor's full power burning through his body. But he kept fighting. Because behind him, the cargo hauler was escaping. Because in that civilian transport, hundreds of people were fleeing to safety. Because if he didn't stop Kreeth here, more innocents would die. One warship exploded, its reactor critical. The other retreated, damaged beyond combat capability. Daewon floated in space, surrounded by debris, his body screaming in agony. The cargo hauler returned, retrieving him. He collapsed in the bay, barely conscious. Through failing vision, he saw Ji-won's face above him, saw her tears, heard her voice calling his name. "I'm okay," he whispered. "They're safe." "The transport got away." "You idiot," she sobbed. "You nearly died." "But I didn't." They escaped into the depths of space. News of the battle spread across the galaxy at light speed. Images of Daewon in the black armor, single-handedly fighting off warships to save civilians, played on every news feed. Among the refugees he'd saved was a young girl named Sora, who told reporters about the human who had appeared like a guardian angel. Overnight, Daewon became a symbol, to some a hero, to others a threat that needed to be eliminated. Tae-young examined him after the battle. "The armor is changing you," he said quietly. "Your DNA is being rewritten at the cellular level. You're becoming something between human and ancient. Will I survive? I don't know. The ancients designed the armor for beings who already possessed their genetics in full. You only carry traces. Your body is adapting, but adaptation has a cost." Daewon looked at his hands, encased in the black armor that wouldn't come off. He had gained power beyond imagination. He had saved lives. But he could feel himself changing, feel his humanity slipping away bit by bit. "How long do I have?" "I don't know," Tae-young admitted. "Months, maybe years. Every time you use the armor's full power, the change accelerates." Ji-won took his hand. "Then we find a way to slow it down. We find a way to help you control it without burning yourself out. You're not facing this alone," but even as she spoke, Daewon knew the truth. The armor had chosen him, but it was killing him slowly. He was becoming a weapon. powerful and deadly and increasingly inhuman. The only question was whether he would live long enough. The message reached the Velkari Empire 6 months after Jiwoo had been thrown to Thresh 9. It was a simple report from a supply ship captain who had made an unauthorized flyover of the moon's surface. What he reported should have been impossible. The Raveth had built structures, not dens or nests, but actual buildings, walls made from stacked stones, roofs woven from branches, storage areas for preserved food, training grounds where young Raveth practiced with weapons that looked disturbingly like human design. And in the center of it all, a human woman who moved among apex predators like she belonged there. The Empire's response was immediate. This was not just embarrassing. This was dangerous. If word spread that a prey species could survive and even thrive on Thresh 9, if other enslaved races learned that humans could teach predators new ways of thinking, the entire power structure of the Empire could collapse. Fear was their weapon, and Jiwoo had turned that weapon into a joke. Commander Taemin received his orders directly from the Imperial Council. Take a military force to Thresh 9, eliminate the human. Eliminate every Raveth that had been contaminated by her influence. Sterilize the moon if necessary. Make an example that would echo across the galaxy. Taemin was known for his efficiency and his cruelty in equal measure. He had put down rebellions on 3 different worlds. He had once ordered an entire city burned because one person had insulted the Empire. He would not fail here. He brought 400 soldiers, 20 armored vehicles, and enough firepower to level a city. The landing ships descended on Thresh 9 in tight formation, their engines screaming across the red sky. Taemin expected resistance. He expected fighting. What he did not expect was for his entire landing force to arrive unopposed with no Raveth anywhere to be seen. Spread out, he ordered his troops. Search the area. Find them. The soldiers moved in disciplined units, their weapons ready, their armor gleaming. They looked professional and deadly. They looked like they had never failed at anything in their lives. That confidence lasted exactly 12 minutes. The first trap was simple. A concealed pit with sharpened stakes at the bottom, covered with branches that looked like solid ground. 3 soldiers fell through before the others realized what had happened. The second trap was more sophisticated. A deadfall of rocks held in place by a trigger vine. When the soldiers tried to help their fallen comrades, the rocks came crashing down. 5 more soldiers died. Taemin cursed and ordered his forces to pull back and regroup. But pulling back meant walking through the same jungle they had entered through, and Jiwoo had spent 6 months making that jungle into a death trap. Snares caught legs. Tripwires triggered swinging logs. Hidden pits collapsed under armored vehicles. The Raveth attacked while the Velkari forces were confused and scattered. They came from all directions at once using tactics they had learned from Jiwoo. Hit and run. Strike from the shadows. Never fight fairly when you can fight smart. The Velkari had better weapons and better armor. But the Raveth had home ground advantage and a teacher who understood how to fight technologically superior enemies. Taemin watched his forces take casualties and felt something he rarely experienced. Doubt. He ordered a retreat to the landing ships, calling for orbital support. If he couldn't win on the ground, he would win from space. He would burn this entire section of the moon from orbit and be done with it. But when his ships tried to leave atmosphere, they found their launch coordinates had been sabotaged. Someone had hacked into their navigation systems and corrupted the data. The ships could fly, but they couldn't navigate properly. Trying to break orbit without proper coordinates would send them spiraling into space or crashing back to the surface. The human did this, one of his technical officers reported, his voice shaking. She accessed our systems during the initial landing. We thought it was a scanning error. It was not. Taemin stared at the report in disbelief. She hacked our military-grade encryption? That is impossible. She is from Earth, Commander. Humans developed quantum computing centuries before achieving faster-than-light travel. Their technical expertise is, I do not care about human history. Taemin shouted. Fix it. Now. While his technicians worked to restore the navigation systems, Taemin set up a defensive perimeter around the landing site. His soldiers dug in with heavy weapons and shield generators. They would hold here until the ships were functional. Then they would glass this moon from orbit and forget any of this had ever happened. That was when Jiwoo contacted him. The transmission came through on the same frequency. The Velkari used for official communications. The image showed a human woman wearing armor made from Raveth scales and holding a crude spear. Behind her stood Kresh and dozens of other Raveth, their scales showing colors of aggression and readiness. "Commander Taman," Jiwoo said in perfect Velkari standard language. "I am Jiwoo of Earth, leader of the Raveth Pack and defender of Thresh 9. You have invaded my territory. You have killed my people. This is your one chance to leave peacefully." Taman laughed. "You think you can dictate terms to the Empire? You are a criminal who was sentenced to death. You are already dead. You just have not stopped breathing yet." "I was thrown away to die," Jiwoo agreed. "But I did not die. I survived. I thrived. I built something new here. And now you are threatening to destroy it because it frightens you. Not because we have harmed anyone. Not because we have broken any laws. But because we exist and our existence challenges your power." "Your existence is the crime," Taman replied coldly. "The Raveth are weapons. You have turned them into something else. Something unpredictable that cannot be allowed." Jiwoo's expression hardened. "Then we are at war, Commander. And war is something humans understand very well." The transmission ended. Taman ordered his forces to prepare for a major assault. Whatever the human and her beasts were planning, he would crush it with overwhelming force. He had 400 trained soldiers. She had animals and traps. The outcome was inevitable. The attack came at dawn. But it did not come from the Raveth. It came from every other predator species on Thresh 9. Jiwoo had spent 6 months learning to communicate not just with the Raveth, but with every intelligent species the Empire had dumped on this moon to die. The 6-legged hunters called Krashik, the massive armored crawlers called Thudrak, the flying serpents called Skyreek. Species that had been natural enemies had been brought together by a human who understood that prey animals survived by cooperation, and predators could learn to do the same. They hit the Velkari defensive line from ground, air, and below the surface. The soldiers fought bravely, but they were fighting an entire ecosystem that had decided they were the invaders. Casualties mounted. Ammunition ran low. The shield generators were overwhelmed and failed. Taman watched his perfect plan collapse into chaos. He made a decision he had never thought he would make. He opened a channel to Jiwoo and requested terms for withdrawal. The human appeared on screen again, now standing in what had been his command post. His soldiers were being held prisoner by Raveth, their weapons confiscated, their armor stripped away. "These terms," Jiwoo said calmly. "You will leave Thresh 9 immediately. You will declare it an independent world under my protection. You will never return. In exchange, I will return your soldiers alive. Not unharmed, but alive. They will carry the story of what happened here back to your empire." "The Council will never accept this," Taman said, though his voice lacked conviction. "The Council is watching this transmission," Jiwoo replied. "I am broadcasting on all Imperial frequencies. Every world in your empire is hearing this conversation. They are seeing that prey can defeat predators. They are learning that humans can teach predators to be something more. You can accept my terms and preserve some dignity, or you can refuse and become the commander who was defeated by a single human and her friends." Taman looked at the screen and saw his entire career ending. But he also saw something else. He saw the intelligence in the Raveth's eyes. He saw the way different species moved together with coordination that should have been impossible. He saw what humanity could do when given time and motivation, and he understood, perhaps for the first time, why the Empire had declared Earth a forbidden world. "I accept your terms," he said quietly. Jiwoo nodded. "Then go, Commander. Tell your Empire that Thresh 9 is no longer their prison. It is our home. Anyone who wishes to be free is welcome here. Anyone who comes to conquer will leave in pieces." The Velkari evacuated within hours. Their ships limped away from Thresh 9 with their wounded and their shame. Behind them, Jiwoo stood with Kresh on a cliff overlooking the settlement they had built together. The sun was setting, painting everything in familiar red and gold. "You think they will return?" Kresh asked. "Eventually," Jiwoo admitted, "but not soon. And when they do, we will be ready. We will be stronger. We will have built something worth fighting for." "You speak like leader," Kresh observed. Jiwoo smiled. "I learned from the best." Across the galaxy, the transmission of a human woman defeating an imperial military force was spreading like fire through dry grass. On slave worlds and prison moons, on colonies and outposts, beings of every species watched and wondered. If a single human could do this, what could they do if they united? What could they accomplish if they stopped accepting The Galactic Council convened an emergency session 3 days after Taman's defeat. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the orbital station above their capital world, their faces showing various expressions of concern, anger, and in some cases poorly hidden satisfaction. The Velkari had been bullies for 3 generations. Watching them get humiliated by a single human was entertainment for those who had suffered under their rule. The Velkari ambassador, an elder named Maureen, addressed the council with barely controlled fury. This human is a threat to galactic order. She has corrupted the Raveth. She has declared an illegal sovereignty over imperial property. She must be eliminated before her influence spreads further. The Terran ambassador, a woman named Hannah, stood calmly. Humanity had been granted limited council representation only 2 years before, after Earth's location had been discovered by accident. They were still considered primitives, barely worthy of acknowledgement. That was about to change. The human you speak of is Jiwoo, citizen of the New Busan colony, Hannah said clearly. She was taken illegally by your empire as tribute. She was sentenced to death without trial. She survived through skill and courage. By your own laws of combat and conquest, Thresh 9 is now hers. She is prey, Morin shouted. Prey does not own worlds. She defeated your military commander, Hannah replied calmly. Does that sound like prey to you? The council chamber erupted in argument. Some species supported the Velkari position because they feared change. Others supported the human because they hated the Velkari. A few remained neutral, trying to understand what this meant for the galaxy's future. While the council argued, events were moving faster than any of them realized. The transmission of Jiwoo's victory had reached Earth through the long-range communication network. Humanity's response was immediate and overwhelming. If one of their own was being threatened, if a daughter of Earth had claimed territory in space and the Empire wanted to take it from her, then Earth would have something to say about that. The human defense fleet launched from Earth's orbital shipyards. 12 ships, small by galactic standards but built with human engineering. They were fast, heavily armed, and crewed by people who had grown up in the gravity well of a death world. The fleet was commanded by Captain Hyan, who had spent 2 years searching for his sister before learning she was alive on Thresh 9. The fleet arrived in the Thresh 9 system 1 week after the Council's emergency session had begun. They emerged from faster-than-light travel in a formation that made every military analyst who saw it uncomfortable. Human pilots flew like they were insane, taking risks that would kill frailer species, pulling maneuvers that should have turned their crews into paste against the walls. Waiting for them was the Velkari Second Fleet. 50 ships, heavily armed, positioned between the human fleet and Thresh 9. The Velkari had decided that if the Council would not act, they would solve this problem themselves. They would destroy the human ships, glass Thresh 9 from orbit, and present the Council with accomplished facts. Admiral Borak, commanding the Velkari fleet, opened communications with the human ships. You are in Imperial space. Surrender your vessels or be destroyed. Captain Hyan's face appeared on screen. He looked tired, angry, and absolutely done with diplomatic niceties. This is Captain Hyan of the Earth Defense Vessel Incheon. My sister is on that moon. You threw her to your monsters. She survived. She thrived. She claimed that rock as her own. And now you want to kill her for having the audacity to live. I am here to make sure that does not happen. You have 12 ships, Borak replied. I have 50. The mathematics are not in your favor. Mathematics are funny things, Yen said. Let me give you some Earth mathematics. 12 ships crewed by humans who grew up in 1 gravity. 50 ships crewed by species who grew up in 0.6 gravity. We can handle 8 times the acceleration we can make turns that would kill your pilots. We have been preparing for war since we discovered fire. You have been comfortable for so long you forgot what real predators look like. You dare threaten the Empire? I am not threatening, Yan replied calmly. I am explaining reality. You can leave peacefully or we can teach you why Earth is considered a death world. Your choice. You have 5 minutes to decide. On Thresh 9, Jiwoo watched the confrontation unfold on screen salvaged from Velkari equipment. Kresh stood beside her, his scales showing colors of anticipation. Around them, the entire settlement had gathered to watch. Raveth, Kreshik, Thudrak, Skyreek, and even a few Velkari prisoners who had chosen to stay, rather than return to an empire that would punish them for losing. Your pack comes, Kresh observed. Your blood. My brother, Jiwoo confirmed. I thought he was dead. I thought my whole family was gone. Family is strongest pack, Kresh said. This is same for humans and Raveth. In orbit, the 5 minutes expired. Admiral Borak had not withdrawn. He had instead ordered his fleet to attack formation. He believed his superior numbers would carry the day. He believed wrong. The battle lasted 17 minutes. The human ships moved like nothing the Valkyrie had ever encountered. They used the moon's gravity to slingshot into attack runs. They synchronized their fire to overwhelm shields one ship at a time. They flew through debris fields that should have been impossible to navigate. And when Valkyrie ships tried to pursue, the humans simply accelerated harder than their pursuers could match, turning pursuit into target practice. 3 human ships took damage. 2 Valkyrie ships were destroyed outright. 15 more were crippled to the point they could not fight. The rest broke formation and retreated. Admiral Borak had learned the same lesson Taman had learned on the surface. Humans did not fight fair. They fought to win. Captain Hyon opened a channel to Thresh 9. Jiwoo? Are you there? It's me. It's your brother. Jiwoo's hands shook as she activated her transmission equipment. She saw Hyun's face on the screen, older and scarred and so familiar it hurt. I'm here, she said, her voice breaking. I'm still here. I know, Hyon replied, his own voice thick with emotion. I saw what you did. I saw what you built. I am so proud of you. You came for me, of course I came for you. You are my sister. You think I would let aliens decide your fate? Jiwoo laughed through tears. Behind her, Kresh made a questioning sound. He had never seen Jiwoo cry before. She turned to him, still smiling through the tears. This is happiness, she explained. Humans cry when happy sometimes. It is strange, I know. Humans are strange, Kresh agreed. This is why we like you. The human fleet took up orbit around Thresh 9. Captain Hyon and a delegation landed on the surface in a shuttle. When the ramp lowered, Hyon stepped out into the red light of the alien sun and saw his sister waiting for him. She looked different, harder, scarred, but alive and strong and surrounded by creatures that should have killed her months ago. They embraced in the way of humans, with physical contact that most other species found uncomfortable. The Raveth watched curiously. Physical affection between pack members was usually limited to grooming and sleeping in proximity. This full-body contact seemed excessive, but then, humans were excessive about most things. You look like you have been through a war, Hyon said, pulling back to look at his sister. Several small ones, Jiwoo agreed. It has been interesting. Interesting, Hyon repeated. You always did understate things. He looked past her at Kresh. So this is the famous Raveth leader I have heard about in the reports. This is Kresh, Jiwoo confirmed. My friend. My partner in building this place. He is why I survived the first week. Hyon bowed slightly, the way humans showed respect to equals. Kresh returned the gesture with a lowering of his head. It was a small moment, but it represented something larger. 2 apex predator species acknowledging each other as something other than prey or threat. Partners maybe. Allies possibly. Something new in a galaxy that had forgotten how to create new things. The Galactic Council reconvened after the battle. This time the Valkyrie ambassador did not shout. He made demands quietly, with the understanding that his position had weakened considerably. The council voted, and the result was closer than it should have been, but it passed. Thresh 9 was recognized as independent territory under joint human and Raveth governance. Jiwoo was granted the title of administrator, a fancy word that meant everyone acknowledged she was in charge, but nobody wanted to call her queen. She accepted the title with grace and made her first official act as administrator. She opened Thresh 9 to refugees, any being who was fleeing oppression, any species that had been labeled as too dangerous or too difficult, any individual who wanted a fresh start in a place where strength was valued, but mercy was possible. They would be welcome. The refugees began arriving within weeks. First a trickle, then a flood. Not all of them could adapt to life on Thresh 9. It was still a harsh world, still dangerous, still demanding. But those who could adapt found something they had not expected to find. Purpose, community, a chance to be something more than what they had been labeled. 6 months after the battle in orbit, Jiwoo stood in the central square of what had become a real town. Buildings of stone and metal surrounded her, fields where they grew food from Earth and from a dozen other worlds. a school where young rabbits learn to read and write, and young humans learn to hunt and survive.